Oh, why is it fighting with me?
Because it's Thursday. I don't
Oh
know.
no. Okay, well, it is. It's not a day unless we're fighting with technology. So
Hmm.
into this video, so
Some
I
people are at 99%. BJ's at, oh no, he's at 99 now. I'm at 99. I don't know what that means.
it's Is it
All
going
right,
live?
so
Is it
just
live now?
you're
Do you
live on
guys?
Facebook. It's
Wonderful.
live on
Okay.
Facebook.
I don't
Yes.
know why it was telling me. It was just showing me my face, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. Okay.
No. Nope. You're good on Facebook.
Wonderful. I think
Oh yeah,
YouTube's going.
I see it.
Woohoo! People are so used to us. Like, is it working?
Right. Staring at the screen. I think it's working. Maybe. I don't know.
We'll blame it on Riverside. All
Yes. Just
right,
kidding,
here we
Riverside.
What's up, goals, gals, and all of my horror fanatics out there? In today's episode, we'll be joined by actor Brett Wagner to discuss all things horror. You may know Brett from movies such as the 2003 version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Chrome Skull, Laid to Rest 2, The Crazies, and more. I think he's showing you one of the characters he's played.
Don't cheat me on Hannah Montana. And
Uh, oh, we got Hannah Montana under the belt and Sons of Anarchy. Uh, so, welcome to the show, Brett.
how are you? Ashley, John, and BJ, what a privilege it is for me to, and listen, folks, I had to book this thing like 3 months out. So I have been waiting in the wings. So that shows you how popular this show is. That it takes 3 months to get on, which is wonderful. That's a good thing. That means that you guys are busy and you have a long guest list.
I mean, you're on the top of our guest list. So,
I appreciate that.
all right. So, Brett or Big Schwag, first question I'm going to come out the gate with is where did Big Schwag come from?
So my last name is Wagner. I mean, I was working bars when I was 16, 17 years old, and I worked with an Australian doorman, and he used to call me Schwagner. So when I got into pro wrestling very late in my life, well, not very late, I was 30s, and I got into pro wrestling. And I had just before the pro wrestling, when pro wrestling started, I was calling myself the Big Schwag, the manager of champions.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to do Monster Garage, I got asked to do Monster Garage, the TV show with Jesse James, to do my wrestling voice for it. I said, well, hey, Tom Beers, who's a very famous producer, Ice Road Truckers, Deadliest Catch, Monster Garage, all Bering Sea Gold, all this stuff. I said, can I try to brand myself with this Big Schwag thing? And he goes, I don't care, as long as Discovery Channel don't care. So I started using the Big Schwag, and 6 years on Monster Garage and doing a lot of car shows and bike shows that kind of people were like, hey, it's the Schwag. And then my mom hated it because she's like, we named you Brett for a reason. So flash forward, I started hosting a drag racing show for Speed Channel called Pastime. And they're like, we don't want that Schwag thing. We want you Brett Wagner, which made my mom very happy. But sometimes people would come on and go, hey, Big Schwag. And I'd be like, shh, we don't, that's my alter ego. We don't talk about it anymore. So, yeah, it's just a cute name that I just tried to brand it and use it. And it seems to have worked. So some people call me Schwag and people call me Brett Wagner. And it just depends.
Now, hosting all the car shows that you did, are you into cars, or is there a specific type of car that you're into?
Oh, I love cars. I'm a biker. So I have a Harley in the garage. But yeah, I hosted a drag racing show called Pastime, which you can see on YouTube. It was on Speed Channel. Speed Channel got bought by Fox Sports and became FS1, and they never re-upped our show. But it was a drag racing show, and I was the host. And I never drag raced, and people were like, "You don't even drag race." I said, "Well, I don't have to drag race to host a show. I had an expert with me, and you just have to guide a show, just like when you have to guide a podcast or something, and you have to, bring different guests on and all that." But I learned to drag race a year after the show. I was just getting tired of people saying, you don't know how to drag race. And I went to Frank Colley's school, and then I started drag racing up in Canada with a guy in a big long dragster, not a door car, but a long dragster. And that was very fun. And I almost went 200 miles an hour in the quarter mile. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's hosting for some people is very easy. Like, Ashley, you do a podcast, so you're used to delegating stuff and throwing it to John or throwing it to BJ or asking questions to guests. So when you're doing a TV show, it's basically the same thing. I have a little ear thing in, and the producers are yelling at me, different stuff and telling me guests who are coming up their names, and you just got to be able to repeat it real quick back and have fun with folks and poke fun at yourself, which is very easy to do. So
And
I don't even know where we're going with that.
I
I
know
don't
you
want
said that it wasn't like a prerequisite to have Drag Race to host a show, but I feel like to be in Sons of Anarchy, you have to be able to ride a bike.
it's funny, but there are some guys. I did a TV show that never aired called 1% with Donald Logue and Abraham Ben Ruby, the two guys that are friends of mine. Abe was on a bunch of kids shows. I think he was on Parker Lewis Can't Lose for many years. And I already knew how to ride a bike. A lot of those guys didn't, so they had to take them for a couple of months and teach them how to ride Harleys. I do believe some of the guys on Sons of Anarchy did not know how to ride Harleys. I don't know anybody's names, but I know they all own bikes now.
Yeah.
And you can see Charlie Hunnam once in a while on a bike ride someplace. So
that's great.
Yeah, I feel like all the Sons of Anarchy people that I've ran into at the different various conventions, they like have obsessions with with bikes, and I'm just like, was that before or after the show?
Well, that show, I was in a motorcycle club at the time, so I used to come ride down to the set with my patch, and I had known, Kim Coates. I have known Kim for many years, and I remember I barged into his trailer and was like, "Hey!" He's going, "What are you doing here?" So I'm guest starring on this episode. And he was like, "Oh, it's so cool." The guys on that show were great. Everybody on that show was really great. It gave not that Kim Coates and those guys weren't already working. Kim's worked forever, Canadian actor, and been in everything big thing there is, and is such a good actor. And obviously Charlie Hunnam, he came from England and was already working. He worked in England. Obviously Sons of Anarchy pushed him way up there to the big time, but a very nice guy. Everybody on that show was very nice, and it's the Sons of Anarchy. You get to see them at a lot of horror movie conventions and a lot of Comic Cons. They will bring them in. And you see that it's a big fan base. In fact, I think I will see Kim Coates in 2 weeks and some of the guys at the Niagara Falls Comic-Con on the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. So yeah, it was fun. Yes. And some of those guys did not know how to ride bikes, but they learned quick.
That makes me laugh because my day job, I teach driver's ed. And so I'm teaching people how to drive all the time, adults and kids. For whatever reason, the kids are like learning so late in life now. They don't want to get their license till they're like 18 or 21, which is really weird.
It is a phenomenon. I mean, I'm 56 years old, so I'm a lot older than all three of you. I don't know. John may be hiding how old he is, but the nice shiny dome takes 10 years off, John. So I don't know how old you are, but when I was growing up, you couldn't wait to get your license because what it meant was freedom. You could get out of the house. You could take all the boys that you were, drinking in their backyard or sneaking drinks, and we could go to concerts. We could go, instead of taking a bus to go see Black Flag, someone could drive us and we could go to all these places that we were never able to go with our parents because my dad wouldn't take me to, he's not going to take me to Huntington Beach, which was an hour and a half away, so I could go see Fear or the Germs or all the punk shows that I like to go to. But you get that license, man. Woo. But then, of course, you crash a few cars, and you get caught drinking. And it's a phenomenon that these people nowadays, they just don't care about getting their license. It's weird.
It is. I thought it's funny.
I'll be honest, I was 21 when I got mine, so.
Fair enough. I mean,
But
everybody.
John, you had all these people driving you around. You were, the heartthrob. What high school did you go to?
Oh, geez. I went to a couple. I went to Abraham Lincoln High School here in Denver. So, yeah.
You were a heartthrob back there, a stud athlete. So people drove you around.
I
You didn't even.
appreciate that,
Coaches
but
were
no.
like, the coach of the lacrosse team was like, John, do you need to borrow the car for the weekend? It's yours.
If only. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I remember I had like a little Volkswagen Beetle in high school, and I hung out with like the metal group. So we go to a lot of metal concerts, rock concerts, and I fit in my car. I'm not the tallest person, but these guys are like 6'3", 6'4", and they're all cramming into my little Beetle, and it was hilarious. It felt like the, classic clown car kind of trip going on.
Yeah, I mean, I had my first car was a '69 Camaro. I was very lucky because 2 weeks
Ooh.
before I was supposed to get that car, I crashed my mom's Honda Accord into a fire hydrant, and like a sardine, that little point, took out the trunk of the car, and they still had to get me a car. So I was very blessed. But I have had many, many, many a fender bender. Have gone through many cars, and now I try not to speed because I'm an old man.
So you're saying you've hit a few things along the way.
Let me tell you something. I mean, here's a real fun example. The Sherman Oaks Galleria, which is a very famous mall that's in California. It's in Sherman Oaks. That's where they filmed Valley Girls filmed there. A lot Arnold Schwarzenegger filmed there. A lot of movies have been filmed there. And I was trying to show off, and my dad's he had a Thunderbird. On a Lincoln Thunderbird, or that was what it was. And I remember I'm like, watch this, because there were some girls coming and my buddies in the car, and I put it in reverse, and I was squealing, I'm going to burn out here. But I saw a pole, but I wasn't going to hit the pole. But I didn't see the big concrete base around the pole, so I tweaked the door, and then I had to drive home with that beeping, beep beep beep, the bell ringing, and I had to go home to my dad, and he goes, "Oh God, another one." And then I had to pay, so I was not very nice to my parents growing up with cars and everything, but.
So we met you at Rocky Mountain Nightmares, and you were there for ultimately iconic Leatherface, and that's quite the classic iconic character. And you are known for the Kemper Kill. You created the Kemper Kill. Can you explain to people that are listening and watching what that is?
Yes.
Oh,
A guy made that for me. I can't remember his name now. I feel bad. So I was cast as Leatherface in the probably early 2003. No, probably 2002. The movie came out 2003. So probably 2002. I saw they were going to hire a local hire in Texas, and I was like, this is just what a mistake this was. And then I went in for a commercial audition one day. And when you go into commercial auditions back in the day in LA, it would be at an office building, and they would have a bulletin board, and it would say, room 1, Taco Bell, room 2, Ford. And I saw like room 3 said TCM. And I'm like, there's no way that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because this is a commercial place. Why would they be casting, in a commercial place? So I called my commercial agent. We had booked with that casting director before, and I said, would you call her and ask her if they have cast Leatherface yet and what they're doing? And she said they had not. They were just trying to get one more girl for the movie, and they were looking at LA. But she said, if Brett wants to come in and put himself on tape, I'll do it. And I went in the next day. I went to a Salvation Army and bought this cheap suit. I was 350 pounds. I was just ginormous at the time. Put that on, and she rolled the camera, and I said, Mr. Bay, Michael Bay, you don't want to waste this role on some bouncer, some ex-Dallas Cowboy football player who's now doesn't play football anymore, some producer's son who's a giant guy. I said, don't waste it on that. I said, Gunnar Hansen and his legacy and all the guys that have played him before, it would be a total waste to just waste it on some local hire in Texas. And then there was a little girl working the camera, and I picked her up real quick, and she squealed, put me down. And I said, I'll see you in Texas. You know, and then I put her down, and then the next day she called me, you know, and said, Michael Bay thought you were funny, you got the gig. I'm like, holy
Awesome.
crap. I called R.A. Mihailoff right away because he was a good friend of mine and he had played in part 3. And I probably called 1,000 people in like under 5 minutes. Guess who the new Leatherface is? She called me back and said, by the way, don't tell anybody. Wonderful. I just told 1,000 people.
Eh,
But we had 2 months before we were shooting. I was in the gym all the time. I was trying to get in better shape, you know. I was there for about 3 or 4 days before we started really shooting. And like the second full day of me shooting is when I killed Kemper with the sledgehammer and dragging him. And we kept dragging him. And what happened is I could feel it coming on. I was starting to overheat.
mm,
I think this was July or August when we were filming in Texas. And that outfit, it was just so hot. And ultimately, I remember I fell on the ground. I said, give me a couple minutes. I got to take this mask off. And I drank 7 Gatorades outside. And I'm like, all right, let's go back in. I knew I had heat stroke. But when you get heat stroke, all your muscles tighten up everywhere. It could be your back, could be your neck. My back tightened up. And I was like, holy crap. And I knew what was going to happen. I knew it would take a week to heal. So somebody had a skateboard. I believe we tried pulling Kemper on a skateboard, so it made it less hard on my back. And the hardest thing was slamming that door shut. I was in so much pain. And then I remember like the walk of shame. It was the drive of shame because we all had to get in. When you're the main cast, they'll take the main cast by themselves in a van. And I remember them dropping me off at the hospital. You know, and then 3 days later, I mean, they came that night and asked me, how long is it going to take? I said, it's going to take a week, you know, at least for my back, the spasms to chill out. And, you know, it's a movie, it's a business. I understand that, you know, they didn't have time. And 3 days later, they flew in Andrew Bernarski, who did obviously a tremendous job. And I didn't talk about it forever. You know, I just was embarrassed. And a week later, I was filming a movie with Scott Glenn and Harvey Keitel in Mexico. And I just kind of got rid of everything that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre related. And I figured, well, I'm never going to work for Michael Bay again. And I'll just, you know, my agent tried to sue them. And when it came down to it, because they said, you know, hey, Brett, it was not Brett's fault he got heat stroke. We didn't have a cool suit underneath. And ultimately, when it came down to it, I said, yeah, SAG called me, Screen Actors Guild, our union, and said, all right, what are we doing? Are we going to sue them or not? And I said, you know, let's just drop it. I think the last guy I really want to sue in this world as an actor is Michael Bay. So, you know, I just didn't talk about it. And I went on to do a lot of other horror movies and The Crazies and a lot of Buffy, you know, Angel, John Dies at the End, a lot of different stuff. And I've been, you know, still doing a lot of independent films and auditioning for bigger stuff. But over the last couple of years, you know, some of the magazines wrote about it. Some conventions started calling and saying, hey, you know, we'd love for you to come out. And, you know, because you are, you know, yes, I'm in the movie 59 seconds to be exact, right? But I still was Leatherface. There's 2 of us in the movie. And, you know, you eventually just go, okay, just accept it and enjoy it. And that's why I mean, I will sign chainsaws, but I tell the people that's not me. That was Andrew, but I'll gladly sign it for you if you want it. But I bring those bloody sledgehammers. So, because that's what I use, the sledgehammer. And it's a little different, you know, when you're at the cons and you're selling stuff, you got to be different, right? Because every Leatherface can sell chainsaws, you know, but not many people, there's nobody besides Gunner and me that can do the hammer, right? The sledgehammer. Yep. So that's what I do. And I'll sell Kemper's face. I didn't wear the face, but I killed him. So I have a few guys, Addison Moray, who's a mask maker or whatnot, makes my my Kemper kill skin faces. And those seem to go pretty good at the conventions. So that is the story of the lost Leatherface.
And it is a pretty iconic death. I mean, the sledgehammer death of Kemper is gory, and it is, you don't forget it.
Yeah, you know, and it was and I never even watched the movie, to be honest with you, until a couple of years ago. I'd watched my part, but someone said, hey, you know, you were in the trailer, because at the ending of the trailer, they show me slamming the door shut. And I was like, oh man, that probably would have changed my mind years ago about, you know, talking about it. But, you know, injuries happen in movies, especially physical movies like that. I'm not the first guy to play Leatherface that got hurt, and that's usually why you have stunt doubles. And my stunt double wasn't there that day. So what could have been?
What? Yeah, and you earned it. I mean, wearing that, what you were wearing, and the mask, and because it was probably humid, right? Like we're talking, yeah.
Texas in July and August is not a fun place to be.
Yeah, they come to Colorado usually in that time, because it's dry.
Well,
up there.
BJ, because you wear a lot of the costumes and enjoy it. It gets even in an air conditioned room, you'll start heating up. So
Yeah, for Comic-Con one year I dressed up as Alf.
Uh-huh.
and it's a big furry suit and a rubber mask, and yeah, I was dying that whole day.
You sure you weren't doing a furry convention? I'm just checking.
Never mind on the comment that I was going to make. So,
No, not that day. Not that day.
Okay, good.
not that day. I was going to say, I think I saw you at that convention and didn't realize, obviously, that it was you because I didn't know you at that time. I think I took a picture, actually, to be honest.
Oh,
with you,
that's funny.
which is hilarious. So, yeah, that's funny.
But yes, like wearing like masks and trying to do physical stuff, like that's extremely demanding, and doing it over and over, because that's the one thing with me and Ashley, we're also filmmakers, and being on set and having to do stuff over and over again, especially in those intense situations, is hard.
Well, I mean, if I can give any advice for people out there, it's like, you got to be physically ready for stuff. Yes, some things are out of your control. I could have demanded that I get a cool suit, which like Mike Myers will wear under Fat Bastard. But I mean, I mentioned it, but they had a tight budget. It wasn't in the cards, and I could have, in retrospect, I could have said, I need to give me some Gatorade real quick, or Power. We didn't have Powerade back then, but they did have Gatorade. So, I'm very careful now on the roles. If I've been on some stuff where I've been heating up real quick, and I'll just tell the director, hey, I need 5 minutes, or I always keep Gatorade Zero or the Powerade Zeros around, and I'll down those things. And I tell everybody. So most importantly is to be ready for a role, whether it's physically or not. I mean, you see pro wrestlers that are giant and fat, and you're like, oh, look at that fat 400-pounder. That guy's in shape though, because you're running around a ring, and we call it getting blown up. You can tell when a guy's blown up after 7 or 8 minutes, and you're like, he's just not in shape. But you can see some of these fat guys, wrestlers, that can go do an hour. Back in the day, Dusty Rhodes, who was, didn't have a wonderful figure, was a big, chunky dude, but he would wrestle for an hour against Ric Flair, an hour, keeping a crowd, entertained for a whole hour. That is one of the hardest things to do, let alone just do 5 minutes in a ring. So.
Well, even working, like, they're lifting people, they're throwing people. And even if you've got a partner who's helping kind of balance and counter some of that weight, you're still having to lift and like run around and roll and flip. It's acrobatics basically for a full hour. And that's not an easy feat.
It is not. Sometimes, so I was like a wrestling manager. I mean, I think I wrestled 2 matches, and I just realized I was too old and I wasn't in good shape enough to do it. But some of the wrestlers, sometimes when you're managing a young guy and he's wrestling, let's say like George the Animal Steel, or back in the day, or the Honky Tonk Man, some of these guys that are older wrestlers tell you, I'm not falling down. I'm not going to the ground. If you want to give me the business in the corner, he may slump, but he ain't going. He's not hitting the ground. So as a young wrestler, you go, okay, you just accept it. You're happy to work with the guy, and you learn a little bit, because a lot of those guys I know we're going into wrestling, but a lot of guys will go over a match. I mean, now you go over a match, but a lot of the older guys, they just call it in the ring. So, this is my finish. Okay, great. And that's all you give him. And he's like, he didn't tell me nothing. I'm like, he's going to call it in the ring. When he says, give me the heat, then you give him the heat, but just know he's not going to the mat. So.
Yeah, and it's okay. We can always go. So I natural conversation. So if we go to wrestling, we go to wrestling. Nothing
Okay.
wrong with that.
No, wrestling's great. And one thing I wanted to mention, other physical stuff, like I just watched the Crazies not too long ago, and that the whole scene under the semi, like I love it so much just because
Well,
like that's like the perfect place to get in a fight, but like be totally afraid of what's going to happen because it's like there's not a lot of places to go.
yeah, that was so that was 2010. So, 7 years later, I made sure when I booked that gig, I didn't even know really what was going to happen, what I was going to do, but I was in good shape, man. I was stretching morning, noon, and night, and I was ready for that. And the thing on that was, so you're in a truck bay where they do change oil. So if you imagine when you take your car in to get an oil change, there's a guy down below. All right, pump, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a truck bay, so a little bit bigger, but I'm a big guy, right? So, you know, I can't put my arms all the way out, and I have to have a fight scene with Timothy Oliphant and then his stunt guy in there as well. And then I had to, which was tough enough. And I think I actually hit the stunt guy a couple times on accident. And then you're always like, oh, and the director's like, will tell you, I did it once and they cut. And then I was like, the guy just said, don't worry about it. Don't stop. If you hit me, don't stop. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. Hit him again, just kept going. But he took it. But they for some reason my stunt double was a fresh stunt guy and they didn't really like him. So they said, well, you do the burn. And I was like, yeah, as an actor growing up, they always tell you, you just say yes. Can you fish? Yes. Can you throw a football? Yes. Have you done a burn before? Yes. And then I remember one of the stunt guys looked at me when the guy walked away and he goes, have you ever done a burn? I said, no. And he goes, so he's like, all right. So he had about 10 seconds to either squeal on me or tell me what to expect. And he goes, all right, you've done pretty good so far. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And, I was very blessed to, you're working with the foremost fire expert guy, the stunt guy coordinator comes in and, you get 2 layers of clothes on, they're all gooped up. And then, they put the mask on you and you have a little breathing thing. And then when they say, all right, so I had probably 11 seconds, but when you're on fire, truly, but 11 seconds on fire, it seems like 5 minutes. And you're like, you have to wait until the stunt coordinator says breathe. They say cut. I fall to the ground. I catch on fire. I turn around 3 times. I hit the ground. And they say, don't breathe until, because if they said cut, but if I would have breathed, I've been breathing all these fumes. And so you have to wait for the stunt coordinator to go, okay, good. So I did one full burn, and then I realized, that was pretty cool, pretty dangerous. I didn't really want to do it again, and I let my stunt guy do it 2 more times because you're also taking money out of his mouth, right? I said, how much is he going to make for this? And I think they said, oh, he makes like $3,000 every burn. And I was like, wow, I got a bump as well. We call it a stunt bump. As an actor, you do something physical that they could have used the stunt guy on. You get a little bump for it. I think I made like $1,800 bump, which I was like, wow, this is great. And I got to do a burn. Would I do it ever again? Probably not.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. Because you really can't see, right? I have another mask over, and there's a scene where you show me looking down, and that's a 3/4 burn. It comes up here and it goes to my back of my neck, but that's all it is. And then you do a full burn, which is, you got to know your space, you got to know where you are. And you're really relying on your stunt guys and your coordinator and everybody there. And that guy with the fire extinguisher to come over and put you out. So it's a trust factor.
They're literally just having to extinguish you at the end of the scene.
Because I'm so hot. At least back then I was.
Now, do they have to use gloves or anything to get you out of the suit because you are so hot, or does it cool down pretty quickly once they've extinguished you?
That's a good question. I couldn't tell you that. It was 20 years of 20. I don't remember. I mean, the gel is, I don't know. That's a good question. Whether they had to do that. I mean, we got the clothes off. But that is a great question. Maybe I'll ask one of my stunt guys and I'll text you back and tell you.
Yeah, I'm just curious how like the after processes?
I'm sure there were some gloves because you get this gel on you too, which protects you, which
Mhm.
probably obviously gets hot as well. And then, the clothes you're doing are all on fire and smoky. So I'm sure there was some kind of glove action going on.
Now, you've been in a lot of horror films, a lot of sci-fi films. Are you yourself a fan of horror, like watching horror?
100%. I mean, that's why so as a kid, I was lucky enough that my mom and dad let me watch, The Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side. For some of you guys don't know, Night Gallery, which was a little, back in the day. And then, Night of the Living Dead was the first horror movie I ever watched, 1968, I believe. And then Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which is a very campy horror movie, which I want to remake just for the title. I figure if you're going through Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, people would be like, well, someone might say that's a silly name, but people go, yeah, I want to see what is it? Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. But I watched those stuff and I loved it. And then I kind of knew I wanted to be an actor. I said, I want to be a monster guy and I want to be able to do all this stuff. And when I was 21 years old or 20 years old, I got into an acting class. It was very funny. It was a John Robert Powers model kind of deal thing school, but they taught acting as well. And I remember I'm in a class with a bunch of 10-year-olds, and I was like, well, am I going to learn anything here? I don't know. And then after I graduated from there, I went and took my first real acting class in Hollywood, and I was like, oh yeah, this is totally different. But out of that, I got a commercial agent. And then from there, I got an agent. So yeah, I wanted to do horror movies. It just took a long time. It took till I got about 30. So, but then I think I did a Buffy, and then I did an Angel, and then I did some other stuff under makeup and, creature work, as we call it. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I would do it the rest of my life. Now, back then I loved to go get in all this stuff. Do I like it so much now? It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but do I like paying the bills and getting health care and scaring folks and be able to have something new when I go to a convention and people go, man, you were scary and I'd be like, yeah, well, that's still appealing to me at this age. So
Was there any of the roles that you played where most of them, if not all of them, you were getting physical with some other actors? Was there any situation where was there anybody that you liked mixing it up with the most on set? Was there any actor that just you guys fought well together?
gosh, I mean, I've been in some good big movies and TV shows working with folks. I mean, I'll be honest with you, not horror wise, but my first movie I ever did was called Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams. And I got to work with him for 2 weeks in San Francisco. And that was obviously, wow, I'm working with Robin Williams. He was such a funny guy. Christopher Columbus, the director, great guy, directed Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin. And I knew he was a cigar guy, and I worked at a cigar store part-time. So I spent all this money on Cuban cigars and brought him there. And every day I'd go to the set and hand him a new cigar. And he's like, well, you're trying to get in my next movie. I'm like, I am. All of them. And Robin Williams was so gracious. And, Robin would tell jokes on the set. And then when the director said, okay, he would stop the joke. He'd do the scene. And then when they said cut, he'd finish the joke. And it was just pretty refreshing. Working with Timothy Oliphant was good. I mean, Timothy's a very professional on the set. Not a lot of chit chat, at least when I worked with him. And some people could take that the wrong way. I just take it as, hey, this is, we got a job to do here. Let's get it done. Right. At the red carpet premiere of The Crazies, he came over and shook my hand and was like, man, had that fight scene turned out pretty good, didn't it? I was like, yeah. And then all the photographers are coming over. And I'm like, what do you do? He's like, just smile to the cameras. So I did. Gerard Butler. I did a movie called Machine Gun Preacher. And I got to go work with Gerard Butler in Detroit. And he was so nice. And I just had a copy of The Crazies. And I brought it. I said, Gerard, I said, thank you for working with. He's like, oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I said, here's a movie of The Crazies. I said, I filmed this a year ago. And he goes, I'll watch that. Yeah. Thanks. Flash forward to the red carpet. I bring my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time. And we get there and I'm making sure we're walking down the red carpet. And Gerard Butler likes to be called Jerry. So I'm like, Jerry. He goes, oh, and he comes running over. How are you? I said, this is the wife. And he goes, hey, listen, I'm real sorry to tell you, but we had to cut your scene out of the movie because it was 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I said, that's fine, man. But I appreciate you coming over and telling me. He's like, yes, because he was a producer on the movie. So Gerard Butler, really cool guy, tall and dreamy. He's got that dreamy look and that voice, and the girls love him. But he was really good to work with, and I've worked with some really good people before. Ron Perlman was nice to work with, but I'd love to work with Gerard Butler again, or some of these people. I'd love to work with Robert Patrick, who's a good friend of mine. So Robert's a great actor and just a wonderful human being, and owns a Harley dealership, so we get along great. And we go riding time to time. In fact, we will be in 2 weeks. We will be at Niagara Falls Comic-Con together, so we'll get to do a convention together, which is nice.
What would you say is your most challenging role that you've had in your career, or is there one that you feel really challenged you?
Well, every role is. I'm just turning off my thing; it's making noise. That's a good question. I did a lot of kids' TV shows, right? A lot of Nickelodeon, a lot of Disney, and they're very, when you're a big guy and you're funny and you understand comedy, you'll get to do a lot of that stuff because all those shows are very over the top. So they love like that wrestler kind of guy that's over the top, the Rocks, Batistas and all that stuff. So they love that over the top. So normally they're very easy. I'm playing a big bad guy and I get to have humor. But sometimes I forget what show it was. I auditioned. I did what I did in the audition room. They loved it. I got hired. On the set, it wasn't that. I think it was the show called. Gosh, I'm gonna forget it now. But I remember I kept doing it the way I did it in the thing, and they're like, no, and I'm like, oh no. Because when you're on one of those shows, like, and you're shooting to a live audience, the writers are there. There may be 30 writers. The people from the network are there. So everybody's coming around, and the kids, they don't give the kids a hard time. But you, as an adult, I'm an adult. They're like, hey, listen, you're doing it wrong. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I did this. This is how I did it. So, TV's a little tougher. Sometimes the movies, playing a big bad guy. I just went and worked for Tom Devlin, who owns the Monster Museum in Boulder, Nevada. If you guys ever get a chance, go check out his thing. He's a great special effects guy, and I just worked for him. I drove up Monday and worked for him Tuesday, playing a bartender. Simple, fun. Can I have fun with it? Yeah. All right, great. Let's have fun with it. And it worked well. But TV, sometimes a different animal, a lot of pressure on you, especially when there's 30 people watching, and you're just like, holy crap. Try to keep it out. I just try to do my job. Here's another thing for you folks that are just maybe starting into acting. Watch a lot, keep your mouth shut. One of the things I used to do early on, 30 years ago when I first started acting, is I would, I'd tell the second AD, hey, I'm going to stand over here and just watch the scene. And you always tell them where you're going. I'm going to sit here and watch. And I would watch how people work on the set. I would watch, how the lead actors, what they did. So if you want to do that, it's exciting to be able to sit there and watch and see how they work with the director. And here's one really big, important thing. When the day is done, whether it's the first day, maybe you have 4 days, always go say thank you to the director. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. say thank you to the DP because, hey man, if that guy doesn't catch you on camera in a nice light or a great way, your scene could be crap and they could hit the chopping block. So always say thank you. Pleasure working with you. There's a writer there, say thank you so much. And I do it every day. Hopefully they remember me and, you get called again for something.
Gratitude always goes a long way.
Yeah. Whether it's BS or not, right?
Yeah.
They don't know. I could be, but I'm always very genuine about it because I forget who told me to do that. And it's gone a long way. I got to work with, I'm going to forget his name. He was a very famous actor, was in a lot of the 70s black exploitation films. He was in, what was the movie? Will Smith redid it, but it was Charlton Heston's for Omega Man. So Omega Man, the actor who played the young African American kid with the fro, who they're trying to save, that guy is a huge director. And I worked with him one time, and I made a comment about his shoes. Man, I love your shoes. And he goes, "Oh, thank you." And I always take a little chance in there, and he just had some cool shoes on. I got to work with him on The Mentalist, and then I went in for another audition for NCIS Los Angeles, and he was directing it. And I got in the room, and he goes, and when I didn't recognize him, and then he goes, "No comment on my shoes," and I was like, "Oh, I love the shoes, man." He remembered, and I got hired again, right? So, it's just little. It's always, as an actor, it's always great to just keep your mouth shut and watch, and good things can come from that. You can say, "Well, no one's going to know me." No, they're going to notice. They're going to say, "Hey, that guy was perfect. He was quiet. He did his job. He didn't BS. He didn't try to pick up on the chicks," and you'll go far.
Is it Eric Lenoville?
Where is my phone?
Just curious. But note to self, if I see him, just tell him I like your shoes. No, just
Yes,
kidding.
if you ever see him in an audition. But some of these people, here's another real quick. I don't know if you like stories, but
I love
I
stories.
used to work at this bar. I am writing a book, so a lot of this stuff will be in a book. I used to work at a bar called Jones, because when I was growing up, I would work the bars as a big guy, and then I had my days free to audition. And Fred Savage, the Wonder Years, came in. I knew he was underage, and I just said, "Fred, hey, please don't drink. You're more than welcome to come in because it's a restaurant as well as a bar." But he kept getting hammered. And they kept just getting, and they were like, "Hey," and I had to tell him twice. And the third time I said, "All right, you're out." What? I said, I threw him out. Years later,
funny.
I'm at an audition for a kid's show on Nickelodeon. I don't remember what it was, but, and they're like, "Here's our director, Fred Savage." And I was like, oh crap.
He's like,
And
"You're
I
out."
was so freaked out that there's no way I was getting the audition. Room full of people, a couple writers. Fred is the director, the casting lady. And I'm walking out, and I turned around and said, "Fred, you don't remember me, do you?" And he goes, and I could see the casting lady going, "What are you doing? Whatever you're doing, don't do it." And he goes, "No, did we work together before?" I said, "I threw you out of Jones." And he's like, "Was I an asshole?" I said, you were a little drunk." And he starts laughing. And everybody started laughing in the room. He goes, "I'm sure I deserved it." I said, anyways, it's good to see you again. Hour later, my agent called and said, "I don't know what you did, but yeah, they love you and you got this gig."
Yay.
And then when I got to the set, they're like, "Are you the one that threw Fred out of the bar?" And I was like, "Holy crap." So you never know. You never know. And you should always listen. You can always take a chance on something. I wasn't going to get that gig if I didn't say something because I was startled. Anything can startle you on an audition. I'm trying to think of her name. Famous guy's mom was a casting director. Anyways, I went in and I remember this lady was yelling at everybody, and I said, "Hey, by the way, I know you're not going to tell me you know my son, are you? Every single actor says that when they come in here." And I'm like, "Holy crap!" And I never read for that lady ever again in my life. So there's a point of taking a chance on an audition, and there's also knowing when to keep your mouth shut. It's a fine line.
You develop that sense over time, right?
You did, of course. It's 100% time.
That actually got me to my next question. I was going to ask you: have you ever had any happy accidents on set? Like, I know you talked about like auditions, but have you ever been on set where something wasn't on in the script, but it happened and then it ended up in the film? It wasn't planned. That was just worked out.
That is a good question. I probably can't remember anything, but I mean, it's when you're doing comedy or stuff like that. A lot of the I did an episode of Mom, and that cast is so funny. You just never know what's going to happen. They may say something funny, you laugh, and they're like, "Oh, let's keep that in. Let's do that again." But I'm sure something has happened. I'm an old guy. You know, I'm almost 60 for God's sake. So my memory goes, but especially with comedy TV shows, you know, they never know what's going to work. And sometimes something will work and they'll go, "That's great. Let's keep that in." Or if you're a regular, one of the big actors, Allison Janney, if Allison Janney says, "Hey, can we try this?" They're not going to say no.
Right.
Or she's going to say, "Man, I really love that." And the director may go, "Do you like that? Felt good to me. Let's keep that in."
So tagging on that, do you happen to remember if the burn that was used, was that your burn or the stunts?
I'm pretty sure it's me. And even if it wasn't, I'm going to say it's me. So, yeah, you know, I'm pretty sure it's me. I mean, one of the stunt guys who's not with us anymore passed away, told me that, you know, a year after, he goes, "You know, I think that's your burn in there." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's awesome." So I'll take credit for it. Until, you know, unless someone says different, I don't think they're going to. So
It was your burn.
it was my burn. There's some things you can take liberty with, and there's some things you can't. So if you've had 30 years in the business, I can take liberty with a few things. And
So you were obviously iconic with Leatherface. If you could choose any other iconic horror character, would you be one or would you create a new one?
oh, that's tough. Gosh, you know, playing Jason would be kind of cool. I would say Michael Myers, but I think I'm too big for Michael Myers. But yeah, you know, Jason would be wonderful. I've had some great friends that have played him. Doug Tate, CJ Graham, who I'll be signing with at Kansas City Crypticon. And but something new would be nice. I mean, I wrote a script where I have a bunch of guys who are biker ghouls, which is a little different. It's like Next of Kin with Patrick Swayze meets Blade. And
Okay.
I wrote this with a really good writer named Steven Niver. It's called Kill Billy. And, it's just a working name, but you know, you're adding a horror, you're adding Sons of Anarchy, you're adding all this stuff that's and rednecks and
When is
drink
this going to be
moonshine.
made?
Yeah, it's tough because it's
Kill
so
Billy.
tough. If I could get Bloomhouse and them to read it, it'd be wonderful. But that's you know, writing is another whole different animal. It's you got to have a really good literary agent, and you got to have it's tough. It's, you know, if you can get the actors. I mean, I got to work with Don Coscarelli, who's a director, obviously Phantasm, and I got to work with him, one of my heroes, one of the reasons why I started acting. So that was a blessing. And I remember when I went to do the ADR, to do the voice on it, you know, just to make sure we had it properly done. He goes to do some ADR months after the movie shot. And as Clancy Brown was walking out, I was like, "Oh my God, that's Clancy Brown." One of my, you know, I love this actor. And then Don said, I did the voiceover, and then he sat down. He said, "So what's going on?" And I was like, "You really want to know what's going on?" He goes, "Yeah." Crossed his legs. "How are you?" You know, he treats his actors like they're his best friends, and which is such an amazing thing to do. And I said, "Well, I'm writing a script." He's like, "Tell me about it." And I told him about the whole thing. He said, "That's pretty good." I said, "So you'll direct it?" He goes, "Well, if you know, get some money together." And he's like, "You know, if you get a studio interested in some actors, I love the idea." But that's, you know, getting a compliment from someone like that is a big deal. And Don Coscarelli is one of the nicest guys in the business. And if you ever get to work with him, he doesn't direct a lot, which is, he should be directing more. because he's given us gems like Phantasm and Beastmaster and some stuff that's before your time, all three of you. But great guy. So yeah, writing is a whole nother animal. But I've always thought that, you know, I'm not just, I'm an entertainer, right? So I've done podcasts, I've done TV shows, I've done radio shows. And I think if when one door closes, another door opens. And if you're not prepared for that, if you don't prepare for that, you're like, oh, I don't know how to do a radio show. What do you mean? You want me to go interview the guys from Metallica real quick? Holy crap. I don't know. You know, I'm like, I'll go do it. Let's go. I'll figure it out later. And if I embarrass myself, then I'll make fun of myself, you know? So afterwards. And you got, if you're going to be it's better to be an entertainer and do everything, you know, and hopefully something sticks instead of just saying, I am this, you know. And for me, it seems to have worked, and I've been gainfully employed for many years.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really adaptive versus I'm just in this one box. We have a listener viewer who said, next if Kim meets Blade, count me in.
Well, if you remember Next of Kin, Patrick Swayze, what's his name? Liam Neeson, for God's sakes, and a whole bunch of other folks in it. Hillbillies that come to Chicago to, you know, vengeance for their son, Bill Paxton, who gets killed. And yeah, I've always loved that movie. And obviously being a biker, I love the bikes. And then I love vampires. Near Dark is probably one of my, you know, besides Christopher Lee and The Lost Boys and Near Dark, it's a toss-up. They're both different movies, but they're both so good. They're both guilty pleasures for me. And you know, Near Dark, female director Catherine Bigelow, right? So it's who went on to win the Academy Award, you know, for The Hurt Locker or whatnot. I mean,
We've had a whole podcast episode like putting Near Dark and The Lost Boys up against each other. And I'm like, you just can't compare them. But The Lost Boys is always going to win for me.
Yeah, it's tough. One is, so listen, Lost Boys is so good. And I mean, I can't tell you the bad things I did looking at Jamie Gertz all the time, but she was so beautiful in that movie. The movie is so good, but it's a totally different. Lost Boys to me it's a blockbuster movie, right? But it's so good. The acting is so good. Near Dark, it's a different kind of movie.
It is.
Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, the whole, you know, finger licking, the whole bar scene is so amazing. There's so much good stuff in that movie. Jenny Wright, who I became friends with over the years. It's they're two different animals.
They are.
So
they're both phenomenal.
But I love them both.
Yep.
Don't make me choose.
Well,
I also like Vampire Circus. See, I'd love to do. There's a lot of Hammer films that should be redone, right? I would love to do Vampire Circus and something like that, for God's sakes. But they'll never be. You know, if I have to choose a vampire, it's Christopher Lee. That was my vampire. Bela Lugosi's great. Some of these other guys are great, but Christopher Lee was the man.
I'm with you. I know that's people would probably expect me to say otherwise, but if we're talking about like classic vampires,
yeah,
Christopher Lee is where it's at for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
John, you haven't said much. John, give me something. What's going on?
I'm the quiet one in the group. No, I just going way back to the other conversation. Do you have any advice for anybody who wants to start out as actor? Basically.
Well, so it's location, right? You have Atlanta, you have New Mexico now. New Mexico's a nice hotbed for movies. You have LA, you do have New York, you have Louisiana, you have New Orleans. I'm not New Orleans, you have North Carolina. So you got to figure where you can go. LA is obviously a big place, but it's also, I'm ready to leave out of here. You know, everybody comes to LA that wants to be an actor, and you don't necessarily have to be here. I would get in a good improv class, right? You say, well, improv's comedy. not it's not just comedy. It's being able to think on your feet. Like if I, threw something at Ashley and said, "Hey, Ashley, you're this." Okay, great. And you don't. Sometimes you don't have time. You go in for an audition and they will say, "I don't like that. Can you do this?" Yes, I can. I'll give me 5 seconds here, real quick, to think about it, and then go. So and then headshots are important, believe it or not, right? So getting good pictures that look like you. My pictures are 5 years old, and I just don't want to go spend $700 to get new headshots. But the problem is that I'm not getting auditions because I don't look. They know you don't look. That was like 5 years ago. So I look. I've gone back to the flat top now, even though it's white almost. And I'm not going to start putting the stuff in like BJ does. No, I'm going to let my gray show. And
Called out.
yeah,
On
but
that gray, for sure.
but it's yeah, it's location is a good place to start. It's going to be tough. They may do local commercials where you live, and they may cast for that. But what happens when you've done all those local commercials? If New Mexico, listen, I love New Mexico. Netflix has a studio there. I think
DC,
Amazon's
the
building a
first one.
studio. Still cheap to live. Atlanta is a hotbed. I mean, it used to be LA, New York, Louisiana, right? That's where but Louisiana dropped their tax incentives years ago for some stupid reason. So Atlanta became the hotbed, man. And Atlanta is super humid. If you have curly hair, or if you don't have curly hair, it will be curly,
You
Ashley,
will.
after a while. But the amount of shows they shoot there is amazing. So a guy like me, I'd be more of a bigger fish in a town like that than, because a lot of people in Canada too. I love Canada but if you look at the Canadian actors, anybody becomes famous moves here.
Right.
Any famous athlete out there, they move here. I'd rather go there. But Canada is very expensive to live as well, like Los Angeles and New York. So you gotta know where to move, and then you gotta get into a class. You got to get into an acting class, and you got to keep it up. I mean, I still have to. I've thought about going back to just keep fresh. Doing plays is not a bad thing. But here's my one story. Mark Ruffalo. We all know who Mark Ruffalo is, right? The Hulk, and such a great actor. We used to work a bar together, and I was, 21. I think he was probably 21 or 22. I don't know if he's older or younger than me. But he was a bartender. I was a doorman. He was doing a lot of plays. And I remember I got my commercial agent. I was so excited. I'm like, Mark, my commercial agent will sign you. They will sign you. I'm telling you. He's like, you know what? I think I'm going to stick doing the plays right now for a little bit. I'm like, you're blowing it, Mark. You're blowing it. I probably didn't say that, but I was so excited that I got a commercial agent. I knew I could get him in over there because they were so nice. But yeah, it's he did pretty good on his own.
He's not doing too shabby.
Not too shabby, but you got to stay fresh. So get in a
Yeah.
class. Even if you aren't ready to move right now, get into an improv class, get into an acting class. There's going to be something at your local college, and see if you like it. Because then you got to be able to make sure. And now everything is self-tape, right? So you got to learn how to do that. You got to get on actorsaccess.com. You got to get on LA Casting, which is not just LA Casting, but that's for commercials. But Actors Access is a big deal to get on because it goes throughout the Midwest, the South, New York, East Coast, West Coast, and you can find some stuff that you can audition for on that you don't have to have an agent. In fact, I've booked a ton of stuff on there, and let me tell you something. Doing an indie film, even people say, "Well, don't pay to do these things. Don't pay to play." I wouldn't do that. However, if I was a brand new actor and there was an opportunity, I mean, can you imagine if I would have, even at this point in my life, if I would have bought a perk on Terrifier 2 and I would have paid to be in, if I would have known how big that movie and how cool it was and gross, I would have paid money to be in that movie just to do it. And look how big it is, and that was a $250,000 movie, so don't be afraid to get, because you got to get a reel. You got to get copy on yourself. You need something to show directors, to show an agent. So don't be opposed if there's a good perk on a crowd-funded project. If there's going to be a good perk and you can get a good acting gig on it, don't be opposed to paying for that gig to get it, to get a couple little things under, your belt, and to see how a movie set works and whatnot. See if it's for you, because it might not be.
Brett's like, and speaking of which, I have a crowdfunding film. You too can be. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to be in Clown Motel 3 with a lot of pretty good actors. Joseph Kelly's the director, and I saw Clown Motel 1 and 2, and I had some friends in it. I saw he was casting, and I said, "Hey, I wouldn't mind being in that movie." And he goes, "Okay, cool." And I'm getting paid to be in the movie, so it's a win-win, and I get to play maybe this demented clown. Who knows?
Yay.
You would be a phenomenally terrifying clown. So now, when you're on set, do you ever use anything to get yourself into a specific character, like music or anything like that?
I think it really depends on the scene and what character you're playing. I played one time on a show called MDs. I played a young father who got hit by like a missile, a rocket from some neighbor that had some old stuff, and it didn't go off, and I'm in a hospital, and I'm supposed to be crying to my son, and then they realize there's like a grenade in my side, and they're like, get the kid out of there. And but if you come prepared, I don't need to try to bring something up in the past. I mean, it just depends. If you can cry, I can't cry on camera. I will use all the tricks. I'll use some Tabasco sauce. I'll use Vicks vapors. I'll pour a bunch of Visine in my eyes, but I've never really had to cry much. So
you're making
think
people
2
cry.
times. Yeah. So it's but memory is a wonderful thing. Bringing up, I can go back, my father dying or my mom dying, or some of my friends who have passed away. I can think about that and get a little sad. Called method acting, but it's that's for a big guy like me, it doesn't really come into play. So, but if I had to go, there's some, there's plenty of stuff I can go back to.
Now, you mentioned Clown Motel 3. Are there any other upcoming projects or anything you'd like to promote?
Man, I'm just we have a movie I finished as well, and last year, Desert Fiends, and with Sean C. Phillips, who's a director out here in LA. And we filmed a movie called Skate to Hell. In Desert Fiends, I got to work with Bai Ling and Scout Taylor Compton. I may kill her. I don't know if I do or not, but something like that. Tom Arnold, and in Skate to Hell, got to work with my buddy Doug Tate, Lee Waddell, who's known as a stuntman. He's known as the original Ghostface killer because he's the first guy to kill Drew Barrymore in the first Scream and working. So Lee is starting to do a little acting, which is great, and got to work with him and some other folks. And yeah, it's and we're always auditioning, right? So I'm always auditioning with my agents, and I may or may not have read for some Marvel movie last month, and you keep your fingers crossed. Ooh. And you hope that something happened. They tend to like the young folk or but there's always parts for, you can work the rest of your life. It doesn't matter. I mean, they need old people. They need fat people. They need skinny people. You can work. You got to be prepared for when that time comes and that audition happens.
You're speaking John's language. He loves Scream. He gets very excited.
It's a phenomenon. If you go to a convention, listen, Robert Englund gets a line. Bruce Campbell gets a line. All the guys from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 50th anniversary, they get lines. It is nothing compared to the Scream cast. It's like this phenomenon. My manager, Sean Clark, in Convention All-Stars, he reps, some of the guys from Scream, Matthew Lillard, Skeet, and Lee Waddell, and a few other people from Scream. I've never seen anything like it in my life, ever. thousands of people running up and making all of a sudden waiting 6-7 hours to get autographs. And
Yeah, I'm just glad that I only had to wait like 3 hours. Sorry.
oh
Yeah.
wow, John.
Yeah, just 3.
John knew somebody. Yeah,
No.
but to their credit, and Matthew Lillard, his line takes a long time because he spends some time with you. It's not like, oh, thank you. All right, next. He actually, will pose with you. Skeet will do the same. Lee will do the same. And that's why it takes so long. But I never knock guys like that. I think it's great that the fans love them. And usually when there's a line, I'll say, hey, Leatherface doesn't have a line. Come on over. So, watching guys like Matthew Lillard, how he treats the fans, Bill Mosley, who's a friend of mine who just got hurt, by the way. He was walking and a bicyclist hit him from behind and fractured his hip and his ribs up in North Carolina. But watching Bill Mosley, watching Felissa Rose, how they treat the fans,
yeah,
you can learn a lot like that. So I try to do what they do, and I'm just we're lucky that we get to go for 59 seconds, and then some of my other movies, which I'm in longer, but for 59 seconds, I'm lucky that I can go to a convention, make some money. I'm a big fan too, so I get autographs from all the folks, and we're just blessed that we're allowed to do that. So.
You are very attentive to your fans.
Hey, is that Mom or you?
That's me.
Well, scoot it over so we can. Oh, yeah, look at that.
I was trying to.
That was really good.
Yes.
All good times. But you are
Yeah.
also great. You too. Like, I watched you interact with the people that would come to your table or walk by your table. You are also equally phenomenal with every person that comes across you.
Well, thank you. I was just trying to get a date with your mom, to be honest with you, but I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad it worked out. I was not. You guys were very nice and gracious, and I remember you said, "Hey, I do a podcast. Love to have you on. It's just going to be a couple months." So actually, it has been a couple months. I didn't know. It wasn't that long ago, right? It was
I
last
don't
month.
think it was a couple of months.
It's like
Yeah, I think it was
couple
last
weeks.
month.
Yeah.
It's like a few weeks. Yeah, exactly.
Was it a few weeks?
I think it was
All
like,
right.
yeah, two. He's like, well, it felt like months.
It did. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys, and 67 minutes we've done. I've talked more today. Hopefully when people watch them will go, that guy talks too friggin' much.
No, this is about our guests. Like, for me, when I first started the podcast journey, and maybe you can relate as when you first started hosting, maybe not, they probably wanted you to talk a lot. But for me, when I first started the journey of kind of hosting guests, I realized I was talking too much and not giving them enough room to shine. So for me, my biggest learning journey has been pause, let them share their story because they are the guest.
Yeah, but sometimes, because I do a podcast, and sometimes when the guest has nothing to say, and you're like, yeah. I mean, so I always over prepare because I panic. I mean, I used to have a show. It was a streaming show, but we were called Wrestling 101. And I had, John Cena used to answer our phones. And Samoa Joe was my co-host with a couple other people and a comedian. And I used to panic when we had people on because I was like, I don't know what to ask them. And I still panic when I'm like, what can I ask them? You can ask the same questions. Well, what got you into horror? What, did you always want to do this? Have you gotten hurt? So I always panic, but
I wing it a lot.
Hopefully they talk. Hopefully you can get a guest that will talk, and all you have to do is go bam, and give them a word or give them a sentence, and they go, "Oh yeah, let me tell you about that." So
I'm going to give you a word.
What was that?
I'm going to give you a word. Ghosts. We're a spooky podcast. Have you ever encountered ghosts? Or are you like, I don't believe in ghosts?
No, I do. I do. It's funny because I wanted to do a show and debunk all these other shows. Do I believe that there are ghosts? That's a tough question. I believe that there are spirits out there, which I guess we could call ghosts. You know, I remember when my father passed away, I was playing poker and I could feel it. I just knew he died. And then I got I got 4 of a kind and I was like, that's a sign. Get out of here. My dad just gave me a blessing and get the hell out of this casino. Yeah, but I do. But I would sure love to do a show and go out there. I would love someone to prove it to me. I do believe in God. I do believe in the devil. I believe that everything you do bad, everything that bad that happens to you on this planet is kind of like hell. So a lot of that stuff is our own doing. I mean, 99% of the bad things that have happened to me in my life are because of me. It's not because of any, there is that one chance of something, out of your realm that happens, but I want someone to prove it to me. And I think that would be a great TV show because, there's skeptics out there. So I think if we had a TV show and we go around to debunk it, and I'll bring different, celebrities with me. I'll bring Ash. I'll bring you guys' crew. And let's go see. Let's go see if that, and not, I don't know if we need those little things that light up and I feel like I'm on Star Trek. Oh my gosh, it's red here. If there's something there, we're going to know it, I'm ready to do that.
I'm in.
Me and
Just
John
call
are
it.
actually going on a investigation tomorrow. So we're going to go see if there's ghosts around here.
Wow. And where's around here?
So it's northern Colorado and Greeley. It's called the Armory. And apparently it's haunted. So we're going to see, we're going to try to verify that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, you tell me, because I will come back up. Listen, if there's something cool and we want to shoot something, I'm more than welcome to figure out how to get up to Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
You say, John, you say, Schwag, it's haunted. I'm going to prove it to you. Let's go.
Right.
And we will figure it out.
In Victor, Colorado, it's supposedly the most haunted place in Colorado. It's called the Black Monarch. And I've been wanting to, and they've themed their rooms after, like, they have like the Bella Lugosi room, the Lizzie Borden room. But apparently it is a very haunted, according to the Google, the most haunted place in Colorado. So I've been wanting to go get these guys and just go do an overnight thing and see what do we find? What do we believe?
Well, listen, there's people that are making a living at this, right? I mean, there's more TV shows. 20 years ago, you ghosts, come on, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, there's 6, 7, 8 different TV shows that have to do with ghost hunting, and so is there something there? Yeah, there probably is, but prove it to me.
Yeah, BJ can tell you I'm the most annoying person when it comes to that, because for me, I do believe ghosts are possible, but I will pick apart, and it's one of those things. Once you get me to believe that is paranormal, I believe hard, but it's really hard to get me to that point. It's a ghost. They're like, Ashley, it's real.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I believed in it a lot. I believed that my grandmother, who lived with us for a while when I was growing up, when she passed away, I believe that, in the middle of the night, I would sometimes see her sitting in the same couch that she sat and all the time. And then as I got older, I was like, I don't know. I just, was that joint? Was that, or, did I really, no, I wasn't smoking weed back then, but, yeah, but I think it's great. I mean, listen, gives us something to believe in. Like I said, I believe in there's right and wrong, and there's God and there's Satan, right? So, because it's tough with all the crappy, weird shit that's going on in our lifetimes, and that's just happened. There's got to be an explanation for it. So, can't just be. There's got to be something there. So, but prove it to me.
Yes.
And I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be proven, and I'm ready for that show. We'll do it.
That's going to be the name of the show. Prove it to me.
Debunk the swag.
Debunk the swag.
Yeah.
Well,
tell me.
I really appreciate you coming on and spending this time with us and waiting 3 whole months, 2 weeks to come on with us. It's been a pleasure, and I could go on and on with you, but I respect you have a show to get to. So
I'm good. I'm just I'm packing. I got to make sure because I'm sitting at someone's table, so I don't have a big booth like when I met you. I don't have that giant booth. I'm going to have 4 feet. So I have 4 feet at the end, which I can't bring a lot of stuff, but I'll bring some 4 or 5 different pictures. I'll bring some comic books. I'll bring some Funko Pops, and hopefully I'll bring a couple sledgehammers to put behind me, and hopefully it's a good weekend. Michael Ironside is going to be there, I believe. So I didn't get to finish talking to him. He's such a cool, scanner, for God's sakes. And
yeah, he kept messing with me at the Rocky Mountain Nightmares. Yeah, he's a great dude.
He's a good
very
dude.
nice.
And I think I do like the Rocky Mountain Nightmares. I think it'll grow. Whether or not they keep it in downtown and they move it, I think they might move it. But really good people running that, and that's half the battle, right? If you have promoters that know what they're doing, they will figure a way. Even if they lose money, I don't know if they lost money, but if they lose money, they'll still figure a way. Because they also do Motor City Nightmares in Detroit, which I'm doing this year.
Nice.
And the lady that's in charge of it is also doing the 45th anniversary next year in Los Angeles of Friday the 13th, which is going to be a big deal. So 45 years of Friday the 13th, and they're going to have obviously every single person that's ever been on Friday the 13th. So those folks know what they're doing. Nightmare Events, I believe, is what so I think they will be doing Denver again. I just wondering where they're going to do it. So
Yeah,
but
there's
yeah, it was
a vampire
awesome.
one too, right? Next year, I think
Yeah,
in
they're
LA.
doing a vampire one as well. V. Neil, who was a wardrobe for Lost Boys and
Oh yeah.
so many other movies, is going to be doing a vampire deal in LA. So yeah,
All I
actually,
have to
like
say,
you're a
yeah,
good vampire.
all I have to say is if they have Lost Boys cast at that, because she's hosting it, I'm thinking they may be going that route. If they have Lost Boys cast, I am flying out to LA. Brett, I'm staying on your couch. No, just kidding.
Listen, you can share it with my dog Lola.
Hey, I love doggies.
I don't know where she is right now. We'll make sure we get her de-shedded before you come over.
We'll cuddle.
Yes.
All right. Now, where can people find out more about your upcoming projects and just more about you in general?
The Big Schwag on Instagram, BIGSCHWAG, The Big Schwag on Instagram, and Lost Leatherface on Facebook, Brett Wagner on Facebook, and I may or may not don't want to do it, but TikTok is such a
The talk.
I don't want to do it. I didn't want to do Instagram, but all my buddies are on Instagram, and I'm like, do I do this TikTok thing? And so we'll see. But yeah, I'm not too hard to. You can Google Brett Wagner, The Big Schwag, and you can find out how to get a hold of me, especially if you're doing a movie
Oh yeah.
and you need a guy with a flat top,
You need a biker.
or a father, or a gas station attendant, or a lawyer.
I need a
I
biker
play a lot of
vampire
rapists. I'm not opposed to it on TV. On TV.
on TV. I
On
need a
TV.
biker vampire. Can we get that?
I got it. Well, I don't. I mean, in my movie the vampires aren't bikers, but we can do it. I'm ready for it.
Yes. All right, guys. Do we have any final thoughts before we wrap this amazing episode and live stream special up?
I did just want to say comment on your Critters guy up in the top corner there. I love Critters. It's so good. Is that that's a Critters behind you, isn't it?
I don't see you, critters.
From the movie Critters, or is that a little Leatherface guy?
It's a little baby Leatherface.
Oh, okay. It looks like a Critters like from here. But anyway.
Womp womp. I'm just
Right?
kidding.
Right?
Yeah. No, that's fine. God, I wish. I mean, I love Critters. Come on.
Yeah.
Now
Great
he's gonna
movie.
have one next time up there.
Gotta
I'm-
get
I
it.
got it, critters. Critters
John,
wearing a
anything?
leather face.
Last words, John?
Just thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Listen, man, I have never spent 80 minutes with anybody that I loved as much as you three. So
We adore you.
Yes, thank you
I
for all your
appreciate it.
energy and everything.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, Yeah. Oh, and here, by the way, someone brought this for me to sign, but this is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 20 years of slaying. And they mentioned me in here someplace. So I forget. I can't find it yet, but I'm in there, which I'm so excited about. So go get it. Listen, if you, pictures, Funko Pops, sledgehammers, masks, if you need anything, I got it. And if you think you have everything signed by Leatherface and don't have the big swag signature on your collector item, your poster, you're missing out.
I mean, I got a really cool comic book. I love comic books, and I got a really awesome one from your table. So
you did. That's right. You did get a comic book.
All right, John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
I do. Thank you again, Brett, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love hearing all of your stories, and would love to have you back on some point.
Well, I think we should. Yes, sorry. I'll love to come on. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Please.
No,
go ahead.
we're good.
Thank you to all of our listeners and watchers for watching and listening to this episode of 300 Podcast. With your host, I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Soda.
If you have any questions, comments, yes.
Go ahead, John.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. If you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Mr. Brett Wagner here.
And also, just be sure to go to 300podcast.com and check out our new merch featuring Ghosty, and keep an eye out for upcoming giveaways. So, yeah.
Until next time.